Ambassador Detrani, you have, in some of your previous experience, worked as the U.S. Special Envoy to the six-party talks with North Korea. And you spent quite a bit of time with North Koreans trying to negotiate a treaty regarding or some kind of development regarding their nuclear weapons. So when you see and you hear that Russian President Vladimir Putin is visiting North Korea and talking with Kim Jong-un, what comes to your mind?
Well, it's a very sad day to see this happening. What comes to mind, I'm totally disheartened. This is the North Korea that, as you said, JJ, I've negotiated with since 2003 to 2017. And what they wanted was a normal relationship with the United States, of course, on their terms as a nuclear weapon state. But going back to Kim Il-sung and then Kim Jong-il and now Kim Jong-un, it's always been the United States. And now to go to the Russian Federation, the revanchist Russian Federation that's invaded Ukraine, what a sad day.
Why is Russia going there, and why are the North Koreans embracing Russia at this point? What's the reason behind it? Yes, it's incredibly sad, but what's their motivation?
Well, for North Korea, they've given up on the United States. They said, we've tried since 1994 with his grandfather, Kim Il-sung. We tried to normalize with the United States. We got close to it with former President Donald Trump, and that didn't work. So they've gone to the Russian Federation. They've gone to somewhere else. And what they're going to get is they're going to get military assistance with their missile programs, their nuclear programs, their satellite programs, energy assistance with petroleum and basically crude oil, natural gas. And for the Russians, it's a bonanza for the Russians. I mean, now they have another ally, if you will, a pariah state that's been vilified by all countries in the world because of their invasion of Ukraine, but also because of their aggressive activities. Now Putin is feeling a bit more emboldened that he's getting military assistance, if you will, ballistic missiles and artillery shells, etc., from the DPRK, and in turn, North Korea is getting a lot from the Russian Federation. What an unfortunate development this is.
Yeah. So, what does this mean for the United States?
Well, it means we've lost the possibility of having a normal relationship with a North Korea that could cause, as we saw in the Korean War, that can cause conflict, that could precipitate conflict and possibly war on the Korean Peninsula, that could lend itself to instability in the Northeast Asia region, but a North Korea with nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles to deliver them. This is an emboldened, stronger North Korea than we've seen in the past, and they've now gone to the other side. So it's a sad day. It's unfortunate for the United States and our allies, indeed our allies in South Korea.
Okay, well, you're a negotiator. You're a good negotiator, and you prove that because you held the North Koreans' attention for a long time, and they've been notoriously a tough bunch to negotiate with. So how does the U.S. negotiate its way out of this situation and into something more favorable to U.S. foreign policy and certainly the U.S. national security interests?
JJ, we have the tools. North Korea, we know North Korea wanted and I think still wants a normal relationship with the United States. This will give them international legitimacy for foreign direct aid, economic assistance, etc. This is something they want. So we have the tools, and that's a normal relationship with the United States. We've conditioned that on giving up their nuclear weapons programs, their nuclear weapons programs, dismantling all their nuclear weapons and ceasing and desisting with nuclear weapons. Because they have not done that, we have sanctioned them significantly. So the tool we have is lifting some of those sanctions, making it attractive for them to come back to negotiations with the eventual goal from the United States and the Republic of Korea of complete verifiable denuclearization. We may never get there, JJ, but the fact is we can get them to stop building more nuclear weapons, stop launching more ballistic missiles, stop threatening South Korea, and become more of a legitimate nation state. And that's important. And we were almost there, JJ. We were almost there in 2000 with Bill Clinton. We were almost there in 2005 with the six-party talks. We were almost there with former President Donald Trump. And now in 2024, we've missed it completely. And they're in the enemy camp.
And speaking of South Korea, there's an interesting situation going on the border there, along the demilitarized zone, and we hear that South Korean troops have been firing warning shots at North Korean troops. What are those North Korean troops doing, and why is South Korea firing warning shots?
Well, apparently the North Koreans came over the demarcation zone and entered the South Korean part of the DMZ, and that's why the South Koreans responded with those shots. The North Koreans said this was accidental. I don't believe it was accidental. I think this is the beginning of provocations coming from North Korea. And I think we'll see more of these provocations. And that's the possibility of, if you will, escalation, because the South Koreans, as you just mentioned, responded to the North Koreans crossing the line on the DMZ. The South Koreans will respond, understandably respond. And the North Koreans will respond in kind. And that's the element of escalation.
So finally, the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said in Washington yesterday that he believes China should be punished for helping Russia in this war with Ukraine, which North Korea is helping too. Is it possible to punish China, and do you punish North Korea too? And so how does that shape up against this backdrop of North Korea meeting with Russia?
You know, I think we have to be clear on this. And you know, when we use words like punish and when we sanction and so forth, I think we have to sort of look for a little more of the common ground. And that's negotiations, that's diplomacy, and that's where it has to kick in. I think China needs to be told, and they have been told, we know you're helping the Russian Federation in the war in Ukraine. You're providing the minerals, you're providing the, if you will, the elements necessary for them to build their weapons to attack a sovereign nation in Ukraine. So we know that. I think with China, I think what we have to do is try to get them on board. Let them realize that instability in Northeast Asia is not in their interest. A nuclear-armed North Korea is not in their interest. Instability on the Korean Peninsula is not in their interest. As they did in the six-party talks, they were very helpful because it was in their interest. We need to look at what's of interest to China, mutual advantageous to China. What are their objectives? And I think we need to work on that. Of course, we need to criticize them. But I mean, to punish, those are hard words. Let's get off that. Let's kick in with diplomacy. Let's kick in with negotiations. Let's kick in to find a common path. And I think with China and North Korea, there's an element here because there's a precedent in the six-party talks where they chaired the six-party talks. There's an element that we could work with them on. So let's get them to work on that. And then we can tell China very clearly, and we are telling China very clearly, we know what you're doing with the Russian Federation. We know what you're doing in Ukraine. Stop it. And I think the Biden administration is doing that. We'll just make it more difficult on trade issues, on the, if you will, the CHIPS Act and the Security Act, making it more difficult for them to get the semiconductors and the microchips they need to keep their industry floating. So yeah, I think we have tools available, but the one tool we're not using is diplomacy.
So it's time to stop ratcheting up the rhetoric and start nudging up the negotiations. That's what I hear you're saying.
I totally agree. That's exactly right.
Ambassador, thank you. As always, it's a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, JJ.